12 structures, 60 feet from one of the most studied archaeological sites on Earth, hidden for 500 years. In January 2022, an international team of Polish and Peruvian researchers published findings that stunned the archaeological world. Using a drone equipped with laser scanning technology, they discovered approximately 12 previously unknown buildings at Machu Picchu National Park. Not at some remote corner of the park. Within 60 feet of a known ceremonial complex that archaeologists had been studying for decades. The lead researcher put it simply, "They were so close, and we did not even know they were there." The structures were concealed beneath dense tropical forest. Invisible from the ground, invisible from the air, previous helicopter surveys had failed to detect them. But when researchers flew a drone carrying a LiDAR scanner just 60 meters above the canopy, firing laser pulses that penetrated gaps between leaves, the jungle digitally disappeared and 12 buildings emerged from the data. These were not temples or palaces. They were staff residences, housing for the people who maintained a sacred purification complex where elite pilgrims stopped to cleanse themselves spiritually before continuing their journey to Machu Picchu. The discovery transforms our understanding of how the Inca operated their most sacred sites. Machu Picchu was not an isolated citadel. It was the hub of an extensive ceremonial network staffed by permanent caretakers. This is the story of what lasers revealed at one of the world's most famous archaeological sites. The site. Most people think of Machu Picchu as a single mountaintop ruin. The famous terraces and stone buildings appear on postcards. But Machu Picchu National Park encompasses over 36,000 hectares, containing approximately 60 archaeological sites. Many of these sites have never been properly studied because of dense vegetation and difficult terrain. One of these sites is called Chalcobamba. Chalcobamba sits at kilometer 104 of the Inca Trail, less than 5 miles from the main Machu Picchu citadel. It marks the official trailhead for the short version of the famous trek. The site was first documented in 1940 and 1941. Archaeologists knew it contained a sacred altar, 14 ritual baths, and an elaborate stone canal system that supplied water for ceremonial purposes. What they did not know was that 12 additional structures surrounded the ceremonial center, hidden beneath centuries of jungle growth. Why previous surveys failed? In 2016, the Peruvian government ordered a LiDAR survey of Chalcobamba using a helicopter. The survey failed. The helicopter flew too high. It moved too fast. The data resolution was insufficient to detect archaeological features. Dense understory vegetation blocked too many laser pulses from reaching the ground. The structures remained hidden. When the Polish and Peruvian research team decided to try again, they took a completely different approach. They mounted a LiDAR sensor on a heavy lift drone. The drone weighed approximately 10 kilograms, and the sensor weighed about 2 kilograms. The entire system cost under $20,000, roughly 1/4 the price of commercial systems. They flew the drone at just 60 meters above the ground. It was much lower than a helicopter could safely operate in the narrow valley. They flew slowly, with overlapping passes, collecting far more data per square meter. The results were dramatically better. The drone achieved dense point densities between 13 and 72 points per square meter. Each point represented a precise distance measurement from a laser pulse. Millions of these measurements combined to create a detailed three-dimensional map of everything beneath the canopy. When researchers processed the data, filtering out vegetation to reveal the bare Earth surface, 12 structures appeared. The 12 structures. The newly discovered buildings are arranged in circular and rectangular patterns on the outskirts of the ceremonial complex. Structure 1 sits closest to the central altar. It is rectangular in plan, built with less refined stonework than the ceremonial buildings at the site's core. This suggests it housed people of lower status than those who use the sacred baths. Structure 2 lies just a few meters away, also rectangular. The proximity to Structure 1 suggests these may have been related, perhaps housing members of the same family or work group. Structure 3 shows a circular footprint. Circular buildings in Inca architecture typically serve different functions than rectangular ones. Some scholars believe circular structures were associated with storage or specialized activities. Structure 4 returns to the rectangular pattern. Its walls are visible in the LiDAR data as linear depressions and raised edges in the terrain model. Structure 5 sits slightly farther from the center, positioned on a natural terrace carved into the hillside. The Inca frequently modified terrain to create level building platforms. Structure 6 shows evidence of an entrance facing toward the ceremonial center. This orientation suggests the inhabitants needed to monitor or quickly access the main complex. Structure 7 is the smallest of the discovered buildings. It may have served as an auxiliary storage space or shelter rather than a primary residence. Structure 8 sits at the edge of the cluster, closest to the agricultural terraces that surrounded the site. Its position suggests its occupants may have tended the crops that fed the ceremonial complex. Structure 9 shows the clearest rectangular outline in the LiDAR data. Its walls have preserved better than most, creating distinct topographic signatures that algorithms identified easily. Structure 10 occupies elevated ground slightly above the others. This position may indicate higher status among the staff population, or it may simply reflect available building space. Structure 11 lies along what appears to be a pathway connecting the residential cluster to the ceremonial center. Its position suggests it may have served a gatekeeping function. Structure 12 is the most distant from the central altar, positioned at the outer edge of the complex. It may represent later construction as the site's staff population grew over time. All 12 structures share common characteristics. They are smaller than the ceremonial buildings. Their construction quality is less refined. They are positioned to be near but separate from the sacred center. The researchers concluded these were staff residences, housing for the people who maintained the purification complex day after day, year after year. Who lived there? Evidence suggests the caretakers were probably women. Previous excavations at Cochabamba recovered artifacts associated with weaving, spindle whorls, loom weights, tools for textile production. In Inca society, weaving was traditionally a female craft. Elite textiles were produced by specially chosen women called archaeologists, who served at temples and royal estates throughout the empire. Similar arrangements are documented at other Inca ceremonial sites. Women maintained the sacred spaces, tended the offerings, and ensured the rituals could be performed properly. The 12 newly discovered structures may have housed these chosen women. They lived on the periphery of the sacred center, close enough to perform their duties, separate enough to maintain the distinction between sacred and mundane space. The water system. Beyond the structures, the LiDAR survey revealed previously unknown sections of Cochabamba's elaborate water system. The Inca built stone channels that carried water from a nearby river to 14 ritual baths arranged around 2 patios. Parts of these channels ran underground, protected from the elements and from potential damage. The drone survey detected sections of these underground passages that had never been documented. The complete water route from source to baths to drainage could finally be traced. But the most remarkable finding came from hydrodynamic modeling. Rather than physically clearing the ancient channels and flooding them with water to see how they functioned, the researchers built precise digital models from the LiDAR data. They calculated slopes, depths, and flow rates. They simulated how water moved through the system. The results confirmed what many suspected. The channels were too shallow to carry large volumes of water. Under pressure, they would overflow. The flow rate was minimal. This was not a utilitarian water supply system. It was designed for symbolic purposes. The water that flowed through Cochabamba's baths was choreographed, a gentle, controlled stream for ritual purification. Not practical washing, but spiritual cleansing. According to Inca beliefs, only flowing water had the power to wash away sins. The engineering ensured water always flowed, however gently, through each of the 14 baths. The pilgrimage. To understand why Cochabamba mattered, you need to understand how people reached Machu Picchu. You did not simply walk to Machu Picchu, you made a pilgrimage. The journey began in Cusco, the imperial capital. Pilgrims traveled approximately 80 kilometers along the Inca Trail, a sacred pathway that wound through mountains and cloud forests. Before entering Machu Picchu, pilgrims were required to stop at Cochabamba. Only very privileged people could get to Machu Picchu because it was a very special place. When you were going there, you had to stop in Cochabamba for a spiritual bath to be clean and pure. The purification process involved ritual ablution in the sacred baths. Pilgrims discarded their old clothes and donned new garments. They emerged spiritually transformed, ready to enter the sacred citadel. This was not optional. Cochabamba controlled access to the trail. Everyone passed through. Everyone was purified. The 12 newly discovered structures housed the people who made this possible. The staff who maintained the baths, tended the water channels, and ensured the purification rituals could be performed for every pilgrim who arrived. What this changes? The discovery transforms our understanding of Machu Picchu. The old view saw Machu Picchu as an isolated royal retreat, a self-contained citadel where the Inca emperor escaped from the capital. The new understanding sees Machu Picchu as the hub of a regional ceremonial network, an integrated sacred landscape extending across multiple sites, staffed by permanent populations and connected by pilgrimage routes. Cochabamba was not a minor way station. It was a critical checkpoint in a carefully designed spiritual journey, and it required permanent staff to function. The 12 hidden structures prove that staff existed. Real people lived at Cochabamba year-round, maintaining the sacred infrastructure that made pilgrimage possible. The technology. The success of this survey has implications beyond Machu Picchu. Drone-mounted LiDAR systems achieved what helicopter surveys could not. Lower altitude, slower speed, higher resolution, better vegetation penetration, all at a fraction of the cost. The system used in this research cost under $20,000. A single research team could deploy it without massive institutional support. This methodology can be applied across the Andes. Similar sites throughout Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador could be surveyed using the same approach. Dense vegetation that has concealed archaeological features for centuries could be penetrated. Researchers noted that their hydrodynamic modeling technique can be successfully used at other Andean sites, and with small parameter changes probably also in other parts of the world. What remains to be found? Machu Picchu National Park contains approximately 60 archaeological sites. Many have never been properly studied. Vegetation covers them, terrain makes access difficult, resources are limited. The success at Cochabamba suggests many more discoveries await. If 12 structures could hide within 60 feet of a known ceremonial complex, imagine what lies concealed in truly remote corners of the park. Imagine what drone LiDAR surveys could reveal across the entire 36,000 hectares. The researchers plan to excavate the newly discovered structures once conditions allow. The COVID-19 pandemic delayed fieldwork. Eventually, archaeologists will clear the vegetation, expose the walls, and recover artifacts that tell us more about who lived in these buildings and how they lived. 12 structures. 60 feet from a site archaeologists had studied for decades, hidden by jungle for 500 years. A drone flying 60 meters above the canopy. A laser scanner firing pulses through gaps in the leaves. Software separating vegetation from terrain. And suddenly, the invisible became visible. The staff residences at Cochabamba represent more than an archaeological curiosity. They represent a fundamental shift in how we understand Machu Picchu. This was not an isolated citadel. It was the heart of a sacred landscape, a destination for pilgrims who traveled days to reach it, a place so holy that visitors had to be spiritually cleansed before entering, and that cleansing required infrastructure, buildings, staff, permanent populations maintaining water channels and ritual baths year after year. For 5 centuries, those staff residences lay hidden beneath the jungle. Archaeologists walked past them. Helicopters flew over them. No one knew they were there. Then a team flew a drone carrying a laser scanner over the canopy. The lead researcher said it best. They were so close, and we did not even know they were there. Imagine what else is waiting to be found.